Hey guys, it's King. Welcome to another Autism Digest interview, where today we have our first triple interview. You might know him from Digimon the movie, or if you're into Pop Goes Punk, you might have heard them cover a Madonna track. They were signed to Madonna's label back in Showoff, specifically Chris NB, Evan, and Mickey. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I think a lot of people might remember you if they're into underground pop punk. Punk Goes Pop Up was a very big franchise of albums. It is still, and I personally remember growing up on Digimon the movie. But for those that may not know you guys, do you mind telling us your story in your own words?
Go for it, Mickey.
This is all you, Chris.
That's all you.
I can tell it. I wasn't there for most of it. You want my version?
Yeah, do it, Evan.
So, all right. I am absolutely the most qualified person to talk about this. Showoff started in 1990 something, and they didn't do a whole lot. And then all of a sudden, they got signed to Madonna's record label, which was a big deal. And then all of a sudden, big labels were signing every band from Chicago, and that just kind of became the thing. Showoff put out a record. It had a song called Falling Star. They did a music video for it. It was big-ish. Is that fair, Chris?
Sure. Yeah.
Big-ish.
Sounds great.
Yeah. And then they didn't do another album with Madonna's label. They did another album. They were going to put it out on another label. And then 9/11 stuff happened. And that kind of, threw a wrench into the works. And so that didn't end up going great. 2005-ish, Chris started putting Showoff back together, which is when Mickey came into the picture. They put out a record. Some other stuff happened that I'm not really clear on after that, but Mickey was around for some of it. There's actually like a big gap where I forget what happened. Chris did a couple of other bands. Mickey's been in 100 different bands. They put out another record with not Mickey, but Chris and some other guys, including Dan, who was the original drummer. They put out the record Midwest Side Story in 20-something teen. I forget.
I feel like it's
what was it?
I think it was 2013.
I mean, I trust you on that. You were there. So we'll go with that.
No, names and numbers, like I have no memory.
Yeah. And then not a whole lot happened after that for a little bit. Chris started a record label and was kind of focusing on that for a bit. And then a few years ago, Chris met Steve and they started playing some music. They needed a new drummer. They called Mickey, realized that now that Mickey was back, that it was Showoff again. And so then Steve, Mickey, and Chris and a couple of other guys did a single and an EP that came out last year called Haverstraw on Man and Cat Records. They brought Brian and myself on board late last year. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I feel like it's late, maybe the year before. I feel like you've been in the band for a long time.
It feels like you've been around forever.
it feels like forever. But yeah, that kind of brings us up to present is Brian and I have been part of the group for a little over a year at this point. We are working on some new music. We've played some really cool shows this year. We've got some really cool stuff in the works, but yeah, that's kind of the short version of Showoff as told by somebody who was not there.
And it's a good version. You guys have definitely done a lot. My next question for Chris specifically, you are a special education teacher. Do you mind touching a little bit about your experiences and what got you into that field specifically?
Yeah, so for a long time, I feel like my little sister, who's not that little, She got into special education. She was teaching it for a really long time. She was great at her job. We have special needs people in my family, and getting done with the label, I was kind of like, well, where does my heart lie? That's where I'd like to work. And special education was the place that I kind of landed on. And, you never know what it's going to be like when you start, but wanted to figure out like what's my fastest route to get to what I want to do, and figured that out. And then started teaching special education, and it's different than you imagine. I mean, there are some parts that are the same, but I think mostly when people think of special education, they think of EBD. They think of emotional behavioral disorder, like kids that have a hard time staying regulated, and that's what they're dealing with all of the time. And I will say that, in part it is that you deal with some of that, but every one of the kids that I work with are awesome, and people think differently, and it's not really on them to adapt to us. It's us to adapt to them. Like, understand that not everyone thinks the same. So, with my job, it is understanding, based on through IEPs and through discussion with former teachers, and most of all, discussion and participation in classroom settings, and outside of the classroom setting with my students, and figuring out what it is that they need from us in order for them to, that's kind of the ultimate goal, right? As to be in special education is to know that your ultimate goal is to not work with those kids, to get them to a point where they don't need you. So it's a unique opportunity, I think, for people to work in. I would stress for people to partake in it, and like go in and sit, and people who are younger to like look at educational field as an option. I know we don't make glamorous money, but that's not the only thing that's involved in a job. So I kind of feel like there are bigger rewards talking to kids who, maybe someone hasn't made a great connection with them yet, and or they have, and they just haven't had that for a while or something, and you make a connection with a kid, and you're basically like, you're guiding kids who have special needs in some way, maybe a different way of thinking. Maybe it's that they have, which is kind of a different way of thinking, I guess, but emotional behavioral disorder, they have a hard time regulating. Maybe you're with a kid who has autism, and figuring out where they are, what their abilities are and what they're good at, and fostering that into helping them be a successful adult, you hope. And successful meaning successful in terms of what, like, I don't know what you'd call it, like the everyday general society views as the terms of success. Like, every kid that I work with at my school, I feel like is excellent in some area, and they need help in a different area. And then that's my job, and it's awesome, and people should be more involved.
I absolutely agree with that. I was a student myself, and I took special education classes as well. My experience definitely wasn't perfect, but I had teachers who genuinely cared and made me the person I am today. So I definitely admire that, Chris. Which leads to my next question for you. How do you think the special education system in this country can improve?
Wow, that's a deep one. I think, I mean, that's a very broad question, I think, because it's difficult. Like, my opinion on education system in general is that, and I posted about this not that long ago, but I think it is I think there are too many tests. I think that you're putting a lot of testing on kids and on teachers and taking me away from the ability to teach in order to test, or keeping me in this box and the kids in the box, more importantly, of what they need to learn is, A and B to test well so that it reflects well on the school. And that's not the school's fault because their funding's tied to said test, in some cases at least. And yeah, I mean, honestly, if from what I have experienced in special education, the biggest improvement that could be made are more special education teachers. Like if we were able to, and funding for special education, because if I were able to sit with, 2, 3 kids in a day rather than like 9, my focus could be a lot clearer. And I think that them having that person with them, and I know people will argue the fact that they don't want a kid to be too dependent on somebody. So they don't want you in the classroom with them constantly, because that kid grows dependent on you for things. And then maybe they're not willing to do that same work with somebody else because now they're not with them. But a lot more spending would be awesome. And I know people are always up in arms about finances and how much money is spent and this is how much they get and whatever else. But I think, and not to mock those people, I don't think they understand like why that funding is needed. I don't think that they understand what that funding could be used for and how much better off kids in general in schools could be with more funding. But specifically kids in need oftentimes are, where you're talking about grade level stuff. A lot of the kids that I work with, I think, are just flat out geniuses when it comes to certain things. It's like oftentimes it's social situations, or it'll be just, how do I express myself like in this situation, and how do I read the room? And it's other kids who might have a speech issue and that puts them behind, even though they're like very smart kids. It's just harder for them to communicate. And therefore, if you had a lot more funds, you could have a lot more people and a lot more specialists. It used to be long ago that special education teachers would specialize. You would be a specialist in a certain area, whether it be autism or working with kids with EBD. But even at least where I work, it might even be that you specialize in a certain variant of autism, So now it is cross-categorical special education teacher. You're a general special education teacher. There just isn't funds to hire enough people to do a specialist position with certain kids with certain issues. There's too much to break down and not enough money. So most of the special ed teachers I know are really hardworking and really caring people, and they want to make things better. And I think there's lots of stuff that could be done to make it easier, and money is one of those things. So
I absolutely agree. At the end of the day, it's all about where the money goes, which is a shame in our society. But I think if people donate more to schools, especially in the sense of special education, we'll never have half the problems we have in the education system again. And let me add one other solution before I move on to the next question.
Yeah.
And I proposed this in an earlier interview previously. At college, so we get 2 hours worth of office hours to talk with our professors a week. I think they should apply that to not just special education classes specifically, but all classes. That way, students who need a little bit of extra help with X, Y, and Z subject can get the extra help they need without feeling too overwhelmed. A couple of high schools have done that before, but it was only for 50 minutes, 30 at least. I think if each student at least got 2 hours a week, one-on-one with the teacher if they wanted it, it would guarantee a lot more success. All right, my next question, we'll turn it back to Mickey and Evan.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure thing, Chris.
I'm like genuinely interested in that, and I'm genuinely interested in getting feedback from someone who's been in special education themselves. But so you're talking about 2 hours with a teacher. Are you talking about the special ed teacher, or are you talking about the general classroom teacher?
Both actually, special education and general ed, not just for neurodivergent students specifically, but for all students who might need a little extra help with a certain subject.
Okay. Are there any other things that you have thought about that you came up with that you think could improve? Because to me, being able to talk to somebody who's been through it, like, what was your experience like that you felt like, if I had this, I mean, beyond just being able to talk to them, like if you had this, you think it might improve outcomes?
That's a really good question. Like I said, my experience within the special education system definitely wasn't perfect. In fact, there were a lot of flaws, but I still had teachers that cared about me. I think one other thing that shouldn't happen within schools, not just in special education specifically, but for all classes and grade levels and what have you, is that it should be common knowledge that X, Y, and Z student is on the spectrum or has X, Y, and Z thing. That way it can reduce bullying and increase empathy in children. Specifically, what I propose is a notification that such and such student has a special need or autism with the parents' consent, of course, because legally they can't do that.
Right.
And I think the parents let their child know about it in order to let them know that bullying them isn't going to be tolerated, because I believe at the end of the day, it's also on the parents to teach their kids kindness and respect, which
100%.
leads to my next question for Mickey and Evan. You told me a lot of members of the band have children that are on the spectrum. What's your tip to parents who might not know what to do when their child gets diagnosed?
You want to go first, Evan?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my son is on the spectrum, and we were very fortunate because he was diagnosed very early. And part of that is that my wife and I were both diagnosed with ADHD when we were around 30, and my son's biological mother also is neurodivergent. His stepfather was diagnosed with ADHD as an adult. So all of the parental figures in his life have some sort of neurodivergence, but didn't know about it until we had been just kind of figuring out life on our own for a while. And the thing that a lot of my friends who were diagnosed as adults keep coming back to is what a difference it would have made if I knew sooner. And so we, as soon as there were any kind of signs that Oliver was kind of struggling with stuff, and it kind of started manifesting primarily as emotional dysregulation. And as soon as we started seeing those signs, we went and found a place to get him evaluated. And just being armed with that information has made it so much easier for us to be supportive of him. But I feel like it should be much easier for parents to get their children evaluated, and just for adults to get themselves evaluated to learn what's going on. Like if you feel like something is not quite matching up in your head with the way that the rest of society expects you to be, it should be easy to get that checked out and find out. I think that just understanding is a huge part of it. And you had talked about stigma too, and I agree with that's a huge problem. I remember when I was in school, I was in the gifted program, which, I feel like a lot of people who were diagnosed with ADHD as adults were in the gifted program in school, because you have the ability to hyper focus on stuff, and you kind of get this very single-minded drive to whatever you're doing, and you're very passionate about the things that you're passionate about, and that's true of a lot of neurodivergence. It kind of can manifest that way. But when I was a kid, when I was in school, special ed, there was a whole lot of stigma about it, and it was either like the problem kids, which I know now is like kids who have behavior and emotional dysregulation issues, or it was like kind of viewed as like remedial, which is not accurate at all. But that was the perception that a lot of people had, myself included, in school. And looking back, knowing what I know now, I would have benefited so much from at least some special ed support in school. That would have been really great if I would have known that it was applicable to me. That said, my experience with my own kid in the special ed program has been, it's been challenging, but I feel very fortunate. The team at his school is really wonderful. They're extremely dedicated. They are really, really doing everything that I could possibly imagine asking. But it's still difficult because at the end of the day, the student, the kid has to buy in too. And so whatever you do, whatever program you have, whatever supports you have, whatever accommodations you're making, it all hinges on your kid going along with it and being involved and being a part of making the decisions and telling you what they need. And so I think that, if for parents whose children were just diagnosed, if you're just kind of starting to get into that, talk to your teachers, ask them to communicate with you, ask them to send you like a weekly summary or something, find out what is happening at school, because it might not look like what you see at home, and talk to your kid about what's happening at school. Find out what is working and what is not. Find out what they want. You can't always make what they would like happen. It's not always realistic, but if you know, then it gives you some direction. If you are approaching trying to parent a neurodivergent kid from a place of not being neurodivergent yourself, or of not being neurodivergent in a comparable way, it can feel very overwhelming. There's a lot of stuff that you just take for granted that you can't take for granted anymore. And so talk to people, talk to your kid, talk to your teachers.
I absolutely agree with that. It's all about communication with anything, really. Mickey, how about you?
I think the best advice is to kind of normalize not being normal, that there really is no normal, that everybody's different and everyone's got their issues, so that kids don't feel different, especially around a whole bunch of other kids who may not be on the spectrum, or that they'll feel different, but making the kid feel proud of who they are, and a lot of times the different gifts that they have versus what their friends have. Like, some kids are good at sports, some kids are good at building Legos. It's you can't compare yourself to other people. But it's kind of hard getting a kid to focus on being proud of who they are, especially if they feel different from everybody else, which they shouldn't. That's, to me, that's the biggest thing you can do for your kid. Also, I mean, schooling is a huge thing. Like my daughter, this is her first year not on an IEP, so she's struggling a little bit from it. But I also feel she kind of got used to using it as a crutch. as like her escape, but now she kind of has to face things a little more head on. She's gonna be 13 next week, so I don't know how much being a young teenager is playing into that, but
I was definitely like that when I was a teenager. These are all really great answers, guys. My last question for you guys is, what does the future hold for the band? Do you have any albums or tours that you want to shamelessly promote?
Yeah, we're currently writing for a new album. We're going to be releasing our original self-titled. We're going to be re-recording that and then re-releasing it. What else, guys?
We got a single that we're working on before the 2 albums, so there's going to be something a little bit on the sooner side.
Yeah, and a video to come along with that single.
And we'll always be playing shows.
Yep, having fun, being, I guess, old people now.
Yeah,
I guess we're old.
That's great.
Yeah,
Look how
weird.
If I had hair on my head, I could be a silver fox.
All of this sounds amazing. We'll be sure to keep an eye out for that. Anyways, that's going to do it for this interview, guys. Thank you so much to the boys from Showoff for coming on and sharing their perspective. If you guys want to see more amazing interviews, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Autism Digest channel. Or check out our November issue that comes out next month by going to autismdigest.com, and be on the lookout for the audio file to be posted on our Spotify. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.